Hey guys, this is Lucas from Better Coding Academy. I'm here with Patrick again, and we're going to go over a couple topics today. But the first one we're going to cover is, once again, building micro frontends with React, Vue, and single SPA. So this is kind of like a follow-up from my last video. Obviously, I've received quite a fair bit of feedback and done a bit of reading, just purely from the results from the last video. And we're just going to have a look now at a real code example, whereas last week's was kind of like more armchair philosophy, kind of sitting back and reviewing. This time we're going to dive into the code a little bit and just have a look at that and give our thoughts on that respectively. So I've got this article here, and essentially the guy who wrote this, he's put together an application, a very simple one that includes some React and Vue on the same page. So this is the, it's just available on GitHub. You can find this yourself as well. So what I've actually done is I've cloned that one, and we're just going to have a look at this here. So starting off in package.json, is there anything you want to talk about first, Patrick?
Not too much. So it looks like they got React and Vue, and they got Router. So yeah, it's I'm guessing it's going to be a React and a Vue project meshed together.
So that would be the main thing here. And so what they actually do is from webpack.config, they use single SPA as like their entry point. So that's this file here. And inside of this file, they use dynamic imports to import Vue and React. And based on the URL, they kind of show both or one of them based on the path name here. So if you have a look at this in the browser real quick.
Yeah. Is that
shows React and Vue.
Yeah. Whoa. Okay, wait. So, is there like a /React and a /Vue?
There is. So /React will cause Vue to disappear, and /Vue will cause React to disappear. But I think one thing to note here is that this is more just to show the components here, but like this isn't something that can kind of be put together into a router, because obviously you're just referencing location or path name straight away. So, I mean, in terms of the code here, it's pretty simple. So the Vue code is just very straightforward, very, very simple template here. And in terms of React, you obviously have, so it uses single SPA React, and in this one here, single SPA Vue. And these are essentially like kind of built off on top of single SPA. And then root.component is just the simple component here, like so.
What's the router used for? Because there was
the router doesn't seem to be used for anything. I think it's just copied in. Honestly,
okay,
I don't think there's anything here that uses.
Cool.
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah. So I remember from like your last post, there was a guy, I think it was called Scott, that gave a really good comment. So part of what the success he found in micro frontend is that he can update certain components with different versions of React. Because remember how I made that argument where he builds it's all encapsulated into one thing. So if we have say part of the app all in one repo, right? Doesn't that just mean all these teams are working on the same repo, and they also can't really use multiple versions of React? So it technically, to me, it doesn't feel like a micro front end.
So
it
this
feels
was
like just a repo with lots of front ends.
Essentially, what I think. So if I can find that part he wrote.
From memory.
Alright, here it is. So basically, if you have a standard use framework X, a version, and track upgrade cycles, then micro frontends are an excellent tool for creating. So basically, I think Scott's overall, one of his points was that, as you said, is being able to have multiple versions of say, React running, even say as a last resort, so that it's at least possible. So then part of that involves having, obviously, multiple repos, because then you can have multiple package.json files. Or you can have a mono repo, but the idea is your code is separated. So then what you're saying is that by using single SPA, you're actually kind of bringing them all together, which in your opinion is a bad thing.
Well, it's not a bad thing, but it feels like you're defeating the point of a lot of what micro front end is trying to solve. All the overhead you're bringing in is meant to solve organizational issues and moving forward issues. But if you put it all in the same repo, it's just one big app again. Just has different technologies.
And I think just judging purely on this structure, and I know this doesn't represent all micro frontends, but if you have a folder called React and a folder called Vue, right? And then inside of there, you're obviously going to have components, maybe a store, maybe routes, whatever else you have. But then the question becomes, what if you want to do like code sharing between the two? Like, at what point is it like, at what point should you make something that supports both? And if you make something that supports both React and Vue, does it then become hacky, or does it like, or is it like, is there an elegant way to do that?
What do you mean support both, like a validator or something?
Yeah, no. So like, for example, if you have like, say, an API, right? Like an API file or something like that, then your API file
like
might be
caller.
So then you have to write that in a language agnostic way. But there are certain things that are very hard to do in a language agnostic way.
Yep.
So then the question becomes how, like, at what point do you kind of say, because this is kind of like the React Native issue, isn't it? It's like when you do React Native, you have all this, like say 70% of your code is great on both Android and iOS.
Yeah.
But then the last 30% is like this really disgusting kind of hack between the two. So that's kind of one thing I see being a problem here as well.
Yeah, so everything I've read about micro frontends from last time is they're meant to be almost separate teams. Like the idea is like they don't work together. Like you're not meant to. If you want a lib that is shared, it should be packaged out into an npm and then shared as a lib across different teams.
So like
not necessarily a file. Yeah, black box. Yeah, not necessarily a file. Because one of the assumptions of micro frontend is the only thing that's constant is the contract. And actually, this project doesn't really show how those frontends communicate with each other, because that's the biggest part of micro frontend, right? Is how to pass context between it. This one is just rendering too. But yeah, so I just don't really think like this is a good idea.
And I think one more thing here is like single SPA, from what I can see, is like they're kind of trying to set out to they're trying to push forward micro frontends and like kind of lead it as like, this is the ubiquitous technology, this is the framework you have to use. But what I kind of see, the difference between micro frontends and something like, say, HTTP REST is like, for HTTP REST, if you do REST, you can kind of, in node.js, you can just use Express and like your problems will be solved for the most part, right? But then when you do something like micro frontends, there's so much more than just code. It's also like, it ties into like, say, microservices, it ties into your CI, your whole development workflow, the DevOps, the testing, like your whole process gets affected by this choice and by this pattern. It's a pattern, it's not a library, right? So maybe just when you use something like this, if you are considering micro frontends and you feel like you do have a good reason to do so, just consider the fact that as the same with backend microservices, it's not always as simple as just a single library to solve your problems. And I think that's something you need to remember.
Yeah, totally agree. And like just with that example, like the CI is fixed, right? Because it's the same repo, so you can no longer deploy the Vue without at least building the React. And it wouldn't make sense to not deploy the React, even though it's the same thing, because they're technically different versions since it's the same package JSON.
Here's an example on the single SPA website. Actually, I just saw that here. So it's taking a while to load, but maybe that's my internet. Okay. Multiple examples. All right. So let's just have a quick look at the React DevTools first and see what part. Okay. So the whole page here seems to be using React, I think. Okay. So you got like a div, nav, home root. So like, it seems like the whole thing is React, I think. So, okay. Now if I click on show me an example, then wait, what? So if I click this, then okay. So the examples are here. So alright.
Yeah. So I'm guessing this is React.
Yeah.
And then I'm guessing if you click on Angular, it will be JS.
It's a little bit slow. Hey, I don't know. Maybe is it just me, or is it like actually? I don't know.
It's probably because it's downloading Angular when you're clicking the Angular tab.
All right. Let's see if we can track the network here. So if I click on Vue, because I haven't clicked on that yet. Okay. Wow,
yeah,
it's
definitely downloading something, right? Yeah.
All right. Is that minified or like? All right. So that's not minified. So I guess that's okay. Like if you minify this, maybe it's like 100 or something. But still, yeah. I mean, 100 even for just this is quite. I'd say shocking.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite shocking.
This is my number one complaint, right? It's like I was reading an article just the other day, and this, like I was just reading, and I kind of thought about it. It even challenged me. It was like we all think that as like, especially as front end web devs, is like every single person we serve has like 1 megabyte of like, can easily download 1 megabyte web pages, but we don't consider the people who are on 2G or the people on bad 3G connections, even in our own city. So when you have these people as like kind of, they literally cannot download your page and they can't use it. So we need to be mindful of that as well. And this kind of goes into the extreme end of the other direction there.
Yeah, I agree. I think like just shipping multiple versions of a framework is not a good idea, and I just think it's so much redundancy involved. And like you said, how at the end of the day, right, like you want to provide the best user experience, and sometimes like the company needs to bend over a little bit, right, for the customer, because that's how all the compromises happen. So just because your teams and your devs want to work a certain way, but you're going to cost the user 2 or 3 seconds a page, like that's not okay. To me, that's not good.
So I think your point there was really good. Is like as a developer, because of the way businesses work, is you are always serving the customer. So like the mentality of the customer is always right. It's like the customer's needs are always before your own as well.
Even if they're wrong.
Even if they're wrong, it doesn't matter. So I think that's just what I wanted to go over for micro frontends here. And the other thing I wanted to cover was styled components. Now you may or may not have heard of styled components. It is the most popular CSS in JS library as of this video right now. So they have released version 5. It is a major version, beast mode, 50% faster server-side rendering. Actually, I think they haven't released it. It's in beta, so it's not out just yet. But 50% faster, 20% faster client-side rendering, 19% smaller bundle size, right to left text support. Like for example, like if you have like Arabic text, it's written from the right to the left, and no breaking changes. So first comment here would be that in terms of semantic versioning, if you have a major version number like StyledComponents V5, the 5 is the major version number. The only time you change that is when you make API incompatible changes, so when you have breaking changes. So technically, this isn't semantically versioned, but that's just picking. You can do whatever you want. And kind of reading through this, it says that so it's in beta right now, but it says that it kind of rehauled a whole part of the internal API as well. So that could kind of make sense as to why they did that.
I know why it's a breaking change.
Which one?
Because it's using hooks, right? So the dependency of React is like one version up. Because I think the old one, the old one is you can.
Because basically, if you are running like 16.7, you could only run StyledComponents V4. But then so then it is a breaking change, I guess. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I see.
Cool. Okay, that makes sense. Now this is kind of like mostly performance. A few things like right to left support isn't that big of a deal. Like in terms of the use cases, you have like I think plugins in. So you have clean React Dev Tools. That's cool. So you have more plugins inside their CSS parser called Stylist. But the one thing I wanted to talk about here was this GitHub issue. Now, this GitHub issue has been open on StyledComponents for 2.5 years now. As of the time you're watching this video, and hopefully it's been closed already, but as of right now, it's still open. So
2.5 years, like
2.5 years,
5 or something, right?
2.5 years. We're on version 5, right? It's gone through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they still haven't. It's a future milestone, whatever that means. So let me kind of explain what this issue is. So firstly, let's have a look at StyledComponents and how StyledComponents works. So if you've never used this before as a library, this is essentially what the library does, right? You have this const button equals style.a. So what this means is that your button is an A tag, in essence, and it has a bunch of styles applied to it, which is really nice. This is good, right? So then you can render this like a component. Now, the problem arises when you start to do style, like extending styles. So I'm going to show an example of that here in a code sandbox. So get React open right here, copy over this bit of code, and go here, add dependencies, style components. So I'm going to use version 4, but it doesn't matter. They haven't fixed it in version 5. So paste that here, import styled from StyledComponents. So, and now let's show both of these onto the page. So I've got a button here, we'll say hello. and I'm going to do the same thing, except this time with the tomato button. So hello and hello over here. That works fine, right? This is good. However, inside of styled components, there's this thing called basically a custom property. So we can do something like isMagic here. Now, there's actually, like, this issue only shows up when this property has a value. So I'm going to put a value in here of isMagic equals true. I know that you can do this. However, that gets around the issue. So we're not going to look at that. We're going to look at when it has a value. So isMagic equals true. Now, inside of button, you can do code like this. So props, if props.isMagic, we're going to return... it doesn't really matter. Like,
it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Let's just say it equals magic, right? So we need to have this for it to be magic. And if that is the case, then we go in here and we write :hover, and we do, say, transform scale 3. So basically it becomes super huge if that is the case. So is this typed in properly? It looks like it's not typed. Okay, whatever.
What?
You hover over this and it becomes big, right? That makes sense. That's good. Now, I want to show one thing, which is that if you right-click and inspect this element, there is no isMagic property on the button. Okay, now this is correct. And the reason I'm showing this is because if you now do the same thing inside your tomato button, so now note one thing here, which is that tomato button extends the styles of button. So basically this whole thing plus this whole thing all applies to tomato button as well.
Yeah.
So I don't need to add the code here, but if I do isMagic equals magic, now I want you to look at the inspect element here. So now you'll notice that if I right click on this inspect, I'm going to show once again the output which is correct, which is that there is nothing here, right? This is fine. However, now let's have a look at where this becomes a problem. Now, this may seem like it's becoming a very niche issue, but it's not, right? Because with styled components, a big part of what you do is like styling custom components, like for example, the React Router link. So I'm going to include React Router DOM. So it doesn't have to be React Router DOM. It can be pretty much any kind of custom component. So I'm just using it for the link component that it provides. So React Router -DOM, like so, and I'm going to put the browser router around here, like that. And what I'm going to do is instead of doing style.button, I'm going to do styled link, right? So I'm going to do a styled copy of the link tag. Now, if I save this and I have a look here, now I'm going to right click and inspect. Now I want you to notice this part here. Both of them now have isMagic equals magic, like that. So this is bad, and it also produces an error in the console. So I'm going to just clear the console, and actually I'm going to pop this one out because then you can see the error. So the error shows up here, which is obviously 2 is marked as required. We didn't have that. That's fine. But this one here, React does not recognize the isMagic prop on a DOM element.
Yeah,
so
because that's not on So just for clarity, right? It's because link renders an A tag, like just a normal HTML A tag, right?
Yeah.
And then it looks like link funnels through all your custom attributes to the A tag. So then when you put isMagic, styled components is passing it to a link, which just passes it to the A tag.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't have to be the link, right? We can look at like another example, like for example, const my custom A, right? And this component here, say, takes in, you know, all sorts of props. And then inside of here, you do like return A, and then you pass in all the props. And inside of here, you can write like, you know, say we have a count, and then we can do like onClick equals, and I'll put in a hook here. So set count plus 1, and say I do const count set count equals use state 1, and React use state, like that, right? Yeah, I think so. So then now we're not using this anymore, right? So I'm going to get rid of that, get rid of this, get rid of that, save the code. Now I'm going to go here, which is the same thing. So I've got 1 here, and you'll notice what happens is inside of here I've got isMagic equals magic, and the reason for that is because it's getting passed down. It's getting passed into the A tag, and this obviously gives an error. This still works fine. That still works fine. That's great, right? But this is an issue. So the reason this happens is because go on.
Just to highlight. So, but the reason why you have isMagic is because you need it for the style, but you don't. But the button doesn't actually want it. But the style is taking it and also passing it down.
Yeah. So it's purely for styling, right? If it weren't for styling, if it were actually useful, like for example, if I did something with it here, like say we did like we'll call this one props, and then we have initial count, if I can spell, then I put initial count here. If we did that, right, and you have initial count equals 5.
Yep. So that one is the actual prop of the custom.
So this is an actual prop, and you'll notice that this one, initial count, doesn't get passed into the tag, and it's obvious why, because we filter it out of the props here, and we're passing in everything else, right?
Yes.
So then that allows us to start on a given number. So the problem here is that basically, if I do isMagic equals magic, it goes into my say I go in tomato button, it goes into tomato button, into button, and then into custom A, and then it goes into the A tag, and it gets put onto my page.
And a lot of custom components pass through props.
A lot of custom components.
Because it makes sense, right? Like I'm sure most of you guys would, have pass through props.
So the example and the one that kind of gave the issue for me, kind of produced the issue for me the most was the link component in React Router, because that one kind of just puts in all the props. It doesn't care. Now, you might say, okay, then Lucas, if you have my custom A, you should do some filtering on the prop set to make sure that you filter out all the the props you don't want. However, the problem with filtering out the props that you don't want is you have to have a set of props that are valid. You have to know which props are valid React props. So then what happens is then I end up having an array of the props that are valid in React. So now I have a copy of this array, and StyledComponents also has a copy of the array in there somewhere. And if every single library has a copy of the same array, this becomes really problematic because A, it's extra bytes, B, you have to manage it when it does get updated, if it ever does.
Yeah, look, I see the problem, and I don't think having copy of the props is a good idea. But one thing is with prop types, of course, the StyledComponents can look at component.prop types and do some filtering there.
Does it do that though? I don't think it does.
It doesn't. It doesn't do it, but it can. Yeah, but it doesn't do it. But
and
not
even then, it's hard to figure out because there are certain props.
It's annoying.
There are certain props, like for example, like isMagic. Maybe it's for both styling and for functionality. Maybe it's for both. So like for example, disabled.
Yeah,
disabled is a great example. Disabled, you have styles for it, but then you also want to filter and pass it down.
Yeah, because it's a HTTP to HTML prop as well,
So the reason that I saw StyledComponents V5 and I was kind of annoyed, right? The reason is because there's a very simple solution to this. And Emotion, which is another JavaScript CSS in JS library, actually figured this out a long time ago. So they actually have this, right? They have StyledComponents here. And the way that they do it is they have something called should forward prop. And I'm going to zoom in a bit on this. So they use should forward prop, and then prop is prop valid. So this is their built-in prop database. But then they also do and prop not equal to color. So basically the color library, it doesn't get filtered down, right? So this is their solution, which is they use should forward prop. Now, I would suggest something like along the lines of...
That's a weird example. They should just have an array and do
I think this doesn't work, but I think you should be able to do this. Filter props is magic. That's it. Right? It gets filtered out at the button level. So then the button takes in isMagic. It uses it to show it, but then it doesn't pass it any further down the tree.
Sorry, can you go back to the Emotion one? Is it filter or forward?
It uses should forward. So it does it the other way.
Yeah.
Filters remove. Should forward is what should it show?
Like blacklist. Yeah, I think forward. I personally think forward is better. But yes. By default.
Why do you think forward is better here? For this particular case, because what I just saw is if you do should forward prop, I think 99% of the time you're going to be doing is prop valid on it anyways. Basically this is prop valid part seems to always will be part of it. Whereas if you do it on is prop valid is valid? I think this is their internal. So this is their internal function which contains a whitelist of built-in props.
Like HTML.
Yeah, like React props.
Yeah.
Props.
React props. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, that's fair enough. Because the thing is you would want to. Yeah, actually, you're right. Because you want all the props because you're styling a component. So you actually, by default, want all the props. And then the ones you don't want are the ones that you put in for styling.
Yeah.
So
and you
you're
also
right.
need to
I think
consider
filtering is better.
sometimes when you have like multiple layers, like for example,
filtering is better.
when you have tomato button into my custom A, sometimes there are certain like this one here uses a whitelist, right? This is a whitelist. So then what that means is if I wanted to pass say an initial count from the top down, I'd have to add initial count every single time.
Everywhere.
Whereas if I just want to get rid of it, then it's already passing down. I just need to blacklist once. So I actually think blacklist is better here. Just
you're right. Blacklist is better. I agree.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? This is all it takes. This is it. This is a simple solution. If you can tell me what's wrong with this, please do. Because the internet on GitHub, people have proposed this. This wasn't initially my idea. Exactly. People have proposed similar solutions. And I haven't heard any criticism about it, right? But like, it hasn't been accepted. However, there has been a pull request that has not been merged yet. It's in version 5, which kind of scares me. But this is the pull request here, right? This one is closed, and so this guy probably up. He is one of the contributors, and he's basically suggesting the use of $ prefixed props in components. So if the first character is a $, it doesn't get passed through. And everything else gets passed through.
Right. No way. Wait. To October 2018, right? Did he close it himself, or did like other people just close it and say no? No, like no way. This is a proposal. Official? Is this official or just some guy?
Still a big fan. Oh my gosh. No, this is not some guy. This is a contributor. He's quite legit, I think.
Author.
Let me see.
No.
So it's where did it get closed?
It got merged.
Did it? Where? Did I miss it?
I saw a purple merge.
Wait, did I miss it? Oh, here. Wait, is it this one?
I think that's the one.
No, that's not the one.
Yeah, okay, maybe you can get merged.
Why is it closed?
No. Why does it take
here,
this
it's closed. This doesn't solve the central issue of multiple levels of components consuming the same sets of props, plus 2 layers. Yeah,
of course.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, but the $ is just, it's so, no.
No, like, I don't know, like, so ugly.
Looks like PHP.
Yeah, it does look like PHP. Okay, if this got merged, would you jump off this library?
I would. And the reason I say I would is because it's so easy to switch to Emotion.
Yes,
Emotion has practically the same API. Like
the alternative
it's
not that hard.
Quite literally, like this is pretty much the same. Style.div, it's the same API. So, it's really not that hard to switch across. I just haven't been bothered to. Like I'm using styled components now. I have a higher order component that I use. So basically what I have to do is, because I don't want to mess with the style thing here. So what I've actually done is I basically have this function remove props that kind of does this.
Oh, okay.
So I mean it's not as nice because you obviously have nesting, but it kind of does the same thing, right? So it just prevents it from going down further.
I see.
But that's that's what we have to deal with here. And that's kind of open source. So probably the style components. Let's actually see. I think he's one of the main contributors. Yeah, see how he just did. He this guy's one of the main guys.
Yeah, he's the main contributor.
He's the main guy.
He is the guy. Yeah. Nah, the $. Nah, it's not, because it's not even transferable. It's what if you suddenly have a library that starts using hash and then you run out of characters, and then it's we're just gonna start having multiple libraries that use $ for props, and it's just ugly.
So in terms of I guess programming philosophy it's generally a better idea to use existing conventions than invent your own, right? Like for example,
yeah.
Python kind of I don't actually know the story behind the history of Python, but look at Python versus every C-like language out there, like PHP, C++, C, C#, JavaScript, Java. They all kind of use curly braces. The for loops pretty much look the same. Everything's kind of similar. But then Python is just in its own world over there. And then another kilometer out into the desert is Ruby with even weirder syntax. Now I'm not saying Ruby is bad. I'm just saying that when you deviate from what is kind of the standard or what's always being used, the main problem with that is this kind of difficulty of being picked up. And people are going to naturally be against picking it up because people don't want to change.
And it's not even self documenting. It's if you look at it, what does the $ do?
Yeah.
You have to go to the docs. It's you can't tell from reading the code if you don't know style components as a library.
Yeah. Self-documentation is another big one. I think you're definitely right here. And the other thing I would say is also, what if you already have like myself, I have 10,000 lines literally of styled components code already written.
Oh.
You know, what do I do? Like, do I go in and add dollar signs everywhere? Do I update all of my unit tests as well to do this? And like, how do I know if I'm doing it properly? The amount of breaking changes and the amount of time it will take, especially in like a large scale production application, it just doesn't justify it at all, and it just isn't a good solution.
Yeah. Is there any reason why they're not accepting the filter props proposal?
Okay, so
like, is there a thread?
There is a thread.
Or,
people have brought it up. So wait, did I close it? No, it's here. So if I go down here, I've actually got one of my. This was my one that I talked about. I don't think anyone has replied to me. So it's always just been about like, have we seen a fix? Yeah, see, it's the should forward prop one, but this one got rejected, closed.
Yeah.
But
I mean, that's just emotion clone, right?
Okay, so this one is by Dan Abramov, right? So yeah, this was 2 years ago. Now I don't really like this, but you can have a read and see if you like it here. So he says tuck away all style related props into a separate namespace.
Where are we looking at?
So basically everything will go into the style prop. You can do something like this.
Oh.
So instead of having primary and default, you have style equals object.
Yep, I see. Well, it's better than a dollar sign, I can tell you that. Yeah, I see. But I don't know.
I don't like it.
So it's more like, to be honest, it's not that bad, because then it's more like, this is the style props and here's the options for the styling, and then the other props are the actual props. Like you know this, you know what I mean? Like the way this API is split is, the styling is not a prop; it's just an option to the style prop. Yeah, which I don't find is.
And
bad.
I think this is like,
okay.
if this was what they started with, I wouldn't be too against it. However, the problem is that there are already existing, like from the beginning they kind of had it like a prop is both. You know, a prop can either be styling or it can be that one, or it can be both.
And the reason is because they want style components to look like a component that has been styled.
So the whole idea is that it is a component. It's not like, it's not this thing we have to work around.
Yeah, it's not a styled component. It's a component that is styled.
So then this raises the question as to whether this is actually a good idea. Because when you have a styled prop, you're kind of saying this is different to everything else. You know, like this is, treat this as separate to other props. But is it really correct to make that distinction? And I don't think that. I think what we're trying to go for here is this combination of CSS, JavaScript, and like the props. You know, like when you have a prop that says should have hover effect, you shouldn't need to worry about whether that's based in CSS or based in JavaScript or based in both.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, so I think, like, I don't think it's not a good idea for like just where the library is going, like, or my guess is the philosophy of the library and what it provides right now, because that just kills it. But it's better than $. I'll take this over $. Because you still have this problem with $, right? Because then all your $sign props are styled props, and all your non-$ props are your actual props.
Yeah.
So it's just double bad.
Dylan's proposal. Which one's that one? Man, Dan Abramov gets so many likes, man. It doesn't really matter what he says. You know, he just gets likes.
I like it. But yeah,
I think saying it's bad. I'm just saying, you know, it's just he's React famous, so it's just like, you know.
I think See, this is the prop types suggestion, right? Well,
no, he's saying to remove. So basically, they're talking about building on prop types, and that.
I think it's a bad idea as well, but you can do it, and I think he's saying the same thing. It's not a good idea, but I guess you can do it. Yeah.
Wait, so where was Galen's one? Here it is. So. Dot props. So what's the solution here?
This is the same thing. Pass.default button.
Oh, okay.
Nah, I don't think it's...
Right, so this is kind of like prop types.
It is. The problem is it's way too verbose.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't want this overhead.
Yeah, I don't like
And,
prop types.
Yeah.
Because
and
it's
I don't
verbose.
really...
I think for that very reason. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, and the pass.default button, like, why is the button in lowercase? Is it, like...
No.
So
This
I'm
button, this is the default value for type. So the type is one of these three, but the default that is passed through is button.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah, but as you said, it's confusing. So I don't think that's very clear.
It's just too verbose. Yeah.
So yeah, my proposal, where am I? I'm here. This is my one, and this is what I wrote. When did I write this?
You're contributing.
I know. I'm such a nice guy. Here we go. So I used basically the same thing as the emotion API here, essentially. So with config, should forward prop, but as we talked about now, I think filtering is better. So the other way, but it doesn't matter. So then the idea is like, you do this, but then as I said, I really don't mind namespacing in a style object, which was Dan Abramov's suggestion, and I don't mind using the $ prefix, which was probably us solution here, but I really do mind having to go back. Yeah, I mind too, honestly. But I really do mind having to go back through tens of thousands of lines of code, changing the props for every single time I use the style component in my code in order to fix an issue I know can be fixed using far less code in a far less disruptive manner without introducing any new design patterns or disrupting any old ones. I think that's right. I think that's
a good
yeah. I agree with me. Who would have known? But yeah, so...
You got 8 likes.
I know.
That's cool. People agree.
People agree.
Yeah.
That's it. But yeah, that's just how it is. And maybe there's a solution, because forwarded as... I don't know what this is, but... I don't know what this is. I really wish I did, but maybe we'll find out.
Yeah. Maybe we'll find out once it gets merged into master. Once version 5.1 comes out.
Yeah. Just we'll find out then.
Why do you think it takes so long? Why do you think it took so long to acknowledge the issue, or to fix it?
Honestly, I don't know. Because I've heard of style components for so long. Like, this seems like such a basic issue.
It's the first one.
Yeah.
It's like the first. It is a basic issue. It's not something new. Is it like I mean, if they have like time to refactor it to use hooks, surely they have a time to think about a solution, considering there is already a model solution on a competitor framework. Maybe it's like one of those things, right? Like they're the emotion is the copy.
Emotion does kind of seem like a copy, and the reason I say that is because emotion supports styled components, and it also supports its own way of writing it, which is pretty cool. So emotion is actually not bad. Like, if you haven't checked it out before, check it out. But
yeah,
it's
I know.
Cool. Yeah,
I know some companies on emotion.
Glamour.
Yeah, and it's not bad. Yeah, so maybe they just don't want to look like emotion.
Yeah. Okay. This seems like it doesn't actually get into the issue because it uses like div tags. It doesn't actually use components. So glamour.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you can't wrap a component. As far as I know.
But then I guess the downside here is in terms of the syntax is quite object based, but I'm not sure if it actually has a like proper CSS style API. I'm not sure. Oh, so it does. It has glamour style. Yeah. So this is like style components.
This is just style.
It looks the same. Very feature. Okay. So this is feature incomplete. We won't look at this one. There's no point.
Yeah. Well. Yeah.
So I guess so that's something, style components, have a look at it. It's not bad. I think style components is very well built. I actually like it a lot, but this is just the one issue that's kind of been my pet peeve for quite a while now.
Yeah. For those on for those on React Native, this is very useful because it's compatible, and React Native there's no CSS. So you really do need a styling library in JS. Yeah. So so what Patrick's point is that you can actually use like style components inside React Native and pretty much write like CSS code, which is really cool because the default one is like you have to do like props, right? It's bad. It's just style, like it's just style tags because there's no CSS. There's no class name. Yeah. So I mean it is good, but just know what you're getting into and understand that. So kind of I guess CSS in JS. That's the kind of the official term here. Do they have words? Yes, they do. Cool. So this is the thing here. And JSS.
the whole idea here is to get around the separation between CSS and JavaScript. So let's just say back in the days of PHP, you have Smiley. Patrick, by the way, he can't actually...
I'm just thinking about something, but yeah, continue.
He actually can't...
I'll tell you.
Patrick can't read PHP code. Like, when he sees it, it's invisible to him. It goes blurry or something.
I remember, like our front-end website, not the app, was in PHP, and you were working on it. Yeah. You actually worked on it, and I just looked at it, and I just couldn't see, man. I had to go to the optometrist after. Yeah, anyway, continue, sorry.
It's right, it's true. But anyways, back in those times, you have your PHP code. So you have MVC, right? So everyone talks about MVC. You have your model, your view, your controller. Now your view would be written in some sort of template language, like maybe in, say, in PHP, the one was Smarty, or the one we were using was Twig, I think. Twig. Or was it like Pug? Anyways, so these templating languages build HTML, they generate HTML from the data given to them. So then as a result of that, when you have class names, you have to put in the class names inside of this code. Now, what you'd normally do is you'd have what they call a static global class name. So like you might have a class name like, red, or like a class name of blue or something like that. And then this would kind of go onto your page as red and blue. Like it would have the same class name. Now the reason that this is bad is because when you use that class name, it's very easy to get clashes, right? Because you either write, like if you write a really short class name, chances are there's some other code on your page that will override that class name. Like you might have
like active.
Yeah, like dot button or dot active, exactly. So so then what ends up happening is you start getting abominations like BEM. Now I've used BEM before in the past. The problem with BEM is that it's like Java, right? It's like the Java of the CSS world. Actually, I can show a really good example of BEM, or like kind of BEM, is a little bit of shameless self-promotion here on my own video, is I put together an HTML Iron Man, and I wrote the CSS in this one in pure BEM. Now, if you look at the class names for this one, we've got Iron Man, head, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, head back. And so what this essentially means is that inside of index.html here, this is the kind of class name you ended up having. Right? And this was commonplace. This wasn't like, this isn't my my kind of complicated example. My one's actually relatively simple. So this is what you used to have to do, because every CSS class name by definition is global. So then came along this thing called CSS Modules. So CSS Modules kind of came along alongside JavaScript and alongside Webpack, alongside this idea of bundling code together and then, kind of mixing in CSS with JavaScript. So the really cool thing about CSS Modules is if you do something like .classname and then you have styles.classname, you actually reference it like a variable inside an object. And what happens is it namespaces it into something really, really cool. So like, wait, it doesn't show a single example?
Yeah, I'm surprised. But it just hashes it, right?
But yeah, so it basically hashes it, right? So instead of .classname, it does like, you can kind of configure how it's shown, but it does like .classname underscore BAC19, whatever. So some kind of unique ID.
So everyone can use .active.
Everyone can use .active. Everyone can use whatever class names they want, right? So then you kind of have that separation, which is great. However, there is still a problem with this, which is that when you start using libraries like React and you start like kind of having this tighter integration on a component-based model, right? Like we talked about micro frontends before. One of the reasons why micro frontends is kind of having a bit of traction and popularity is because people want to have that componentization. They want to have one thing that works on its own. And part of the problem with having, separate CSS and JavaScript files is that there's like this kind of barrier that it's very hard to cross because they're two languages, right? You've got your CSS and you've got your JavaScript. So fundamentally there is that separation. So then something like StyledComponents, what it actually does is it's the result of wondering how we could enhance CSS for styling React component systems. And part of the idea of that is that you have your CSS code on the same page as you have your React code. And it's all like intermingled, and you can directly modify it using props, and it has it's basically just a component, as Patrick said. So then the idea of this is that you have this really nice combination of the two, which allows you to do things in a single place, right? So if you want to have styled components, the idea is that it's kind of related to a single component. It's local, it's well defined, it is modular, and it can be used on its own like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Two things, or maybe three things I want to say. So first of all, BEM is so bad in React because, like, say you want to go active, right?
Yeah.
It's one class under underscore dash dash whatever, right? But in React, it's very hard to like concat. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you got to do ternary, and basically you got to write it. So it just makes your code look.
So in React, it becomes something like class name, curly braces, backtick, and then say app hyphen heading and then like this, and then is active.
Yeah. It's so bad.
Question mark hyphen active.
Yeah. Of course, there's like other ways to do it, and then there's like the whole class names module, which helps you toggle things on and off. But it's still not good. Like there's no good way to do BEM, in my opinion. The other thing I want to say is one of the problems with mixing JS into CSS into JS is I've seen apps that doesn't render anything until it loads 1 megabyte. Because if you have the CS outside, right, you can render the loader in your index.html, and then your React just mounts the app over the loader. So at least you see something. Yeah. Whereas if a poorly written app would like have this massive initial load, and it just can't render anything because the CSS is inside the JS. So you've got to be mindful of chunking your apps properly.
I do think that problem can be mostly mitigated with proper chunking. And also with like kind of, because I think there should be like a couple of states. Like you should have one with like pure HTML, a tiny bit of CSS, and then you have like your more interactive loader if you need something like that, and then your full app. So like even like styled components, because all you like realistically need is styled components plus, okay, this is getting pretty big, but like, you know, roughly around 50 kilobytes, right? So if you kind of like split that properly, you're looking at maybe 70 kilobytes for an initial load, which, you know, for a full web app, that isn't too bad. But like, as I said, even before that, you can have just static h1 tag loading ... or something like that.
Yeah. I know in style components, there's like a style.global where it just like mounts classes or something to the global space. So maybe that's useful. But yeah, that's something to watch out for.
Yeah.
So the reason why I was semi-laughing before when you talk about PHP is, have you seen JS in CSS before? It's a thing, yeah. Well, it's not a thing, but it's pretty funny, yeah. It's possible. I didn't even know it was possible.
How? What's this one here?
Yeah, click on it and see what happens. JS in CSS. It doesn't. Let me do a quick Google, and then, you know. Because like you can, it's like a before and after tag where you can actually put in like content. You can put in a script tag using CSS, and it just runs this JS.
JavaScript in CSS. Executing JavaScript in, this is 2013, so probably not.
Yeah. It's more like a meme, but anyway, obviously, you know, people don't do it, but yes. Yeah. If I find the meme, I'll let you know, and we can look at it next time. You're doing Google Images. That's tricky.
Alright.
Yeah.
Anyways, yeah. So that's pretty much, I mean, that's kind of my view. And I went on a bit of a ramble of like how we got to today and like the purpose of styled components. But I think it's important to realize that because it is a separate language, right? Like CSS is fundamentally separate. So if, let's just say you're watching this video right now, and you've never properly learned CSS. You've never properly learned JavaScript either. You jump in, you've learned React, and you've learned styled components. Then there are many things that you end up not understanding about CSS, and you end up not understanding about styled components and why certain things are good / bad / what, like, you know, the reasons why we do them. So it's important to understand how we got to today. So we went through this kind of journey of different things to get to the current state, which I think we should be really grateful for in any case, even though there are ways to improve.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's very important when you pick up a framework and a library. You got to be at least conscious of what is the problem you're trying to solve in the first place.
Yeah.
And always kind of understand like what these libraries are actually trying to solve. One thing I want to just as a general thing is like, you know how in engineering, say in a car company, right? You have the people that build the cars, build the engine, and they're the engineers. And then you have the mechanic that can put together the engine and fix the engine, but they're not engineers.
Yeah.
Right? But in coding, that differentiation is not clear. Everyone is a developer. But some developers obviously have a much more in-depth knowledge about what's happening, and other developers just kind of know how to put pieces together and copy and paste. So I think it's an industry thing, but I think everyone should strive to be that engineer.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and really understand.
The other thing, you just reminded me of this bit of comedy I was watching the other day. They were talking about substitute teachers and how there are substitute teachers, but there are no substitutes in other professions. So like, imagine you have like a substitute firefighter who comes. And he's like, okay, I don't know how to put out your fire, but we're just going to watch a movie for the rest of the day.
Well, you cut out on audio, but yes, that's yeah. Actually, that's true. That's interesting. I'll have a think about that one.
Substitute police officer, They
Substitute
can't give you a fine. They can't give you a ticket, but they'll write a note when the real police officer comes. They'll be really angry at you. Like, that was pretty funny though. That was really good.
That's
pretty
funny.
And I think for like coders, one of the like money dreams is like to one day end up in Silicon Valley, because then you get paid a lot. But then obviously commute and lifestyle, work, and it's generally a lot more expensive there as well. So
yeah, but I think people tell me that, but I think as a counter argument, it's a lot better to earn more and spend more than to earn less and spend less.
That's true.
Because you always have the option to go frugal, but the reverse is not true.
Smart.
Cool. Well, it's a good video. I really like the style components.
That's pretty much it.
Went pretty deep into that.
So that's pretty much it. We looked at quite a few things today. So just kind of going over from micro frontends. Last time we had a look into style components. I went on a bit of a rant for CSS and JS. So thank you for joining us in this episode of Tech Red Pill. And this has been Lucas and Patrick with Better Coding Academy. And see you guys later.
Yeah, thanks. See ya.